Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all, lovely Ethereum people. It's good to be here. I went for the enigmatic title this time, Decentralize or Die, which I mean quite literally, which I'll get to in a minute. So I'm trying to tell a bit of a story here about trying to remind us a little bit about why decentralization is important, because we've kind of forgotten it a little bit. But also I think it's like even more important than ever. So the kind of story I'm starting with is to try and paint the context a little bit of a kind of world that I think is in trouble. I call it largely the crisis age. I think we're likely going to get a lot more crises in the future. Some people call this like the polycrisis or whatever. Generally means everything's a bit broken. And one of the reasons why I think it's a bit broken is because of a governance crisis, effectively. So being a kind of governance nerd, which is a curse, I can promise you, you take a look at these systems, right? If like your interest is governance, you look at how the governance is going. And largely it's in a diabolical state. And actually almost every large governing entity are totally out of their depth and consistently make terrible decisions. Like, it's got to a level where they only make bad decisions. I think there's a level of institutional decay that's got into the system at large. Just there's consistent bad decisions. So consequently, institutional trust is collapsing, legitimacy is evaporating, and the geopolitical environment is getting shifty. And so basically, like, my point here is that every sufficiently centralized system collapses under the weight of its own complexity. And it's not my point, this is just a well-known thing that anyone who kind of studies complexity science will be well aware of. And I think we're getting close. And one of the main reasons is that if you look at what causes complexity, it's largely like these main drivers, like interdependency. So when you have a large-scaled system, lots and lots of people in it, and there's a lot of us, you know, there's many billions of people, and we've increasingly got more connected. So about 30-odd years ago, we like switched on the internet and connected everyone in the world, which has significantly ramped complexity. We now interact with people on a global level way more than we ever have done, like by orders of magnitude. And now, like a Trump tweet can like annihilate trillions of dollars in value. We are hyper-centralized in some ways. And what that does is create a very complex system which creates nonlinearity. So this all is like the child of chaos theory. Small things, small changes can create massive changes. Massive changes might do nothing. You can't really predict it. And consequently, we're heading into a world of like massively ramping complexity. And kind of my argument here is that we're trying to govern these increasingly complex systems using institutional architectures built for a much simpler world. I mean, you just think about your own governments or whatever. When did they last have an upgrade in the way that they made decisions? They haven't, is the answer. And to make things a little bit more spicy, we're entering into the age of acceleration. So this little chart here looks like a straight line, right? And what it is, it's the amount of like new inventions every 10,000 years. And this is a log scale. So the straight line means exponential. So we've actually always been accelerating, right? So we've been accelerating in technology. But if you look back from like our first tools to when we got fire, millions of years. And around the Paleolithic era, we used to invent something like once every 100,000 years. And now we invent like hundreds of things a day, right? We're just at this apex moment. And AI is an accelerant, right? It's takeoff time. Like it's only going to get more complex from here. And the problem is we're not upgrading our governance. And a bit of cybernetics theory for you. There's a thing called Ashby's law, otherwise known as the law of requisite variety. And this is a guy who like mathematically was trying to understand how you can regulate systems. And he meant regulate in a kind of like more mechanical cybernetics sort of way. But basically said like, if you're going to try and regulate this system, then R needs to be at least as complex as the system that you're regulating. And if you don't, you get negative externalities. And so we're basically using governance systems that are too dumb. And we did a lot of this in the DAO world, right? We said the DAO will do it, but the DAO was just a dumb smart contract. right? It's just a simple voting system. Why would you expect complex decision-making out of it? And we didn't, right? We got a lot of bad decisions out of them. So only complexity can absorb complexity. And I like this. Every good regulator of a system must be a model of that system. And that shows you that the people who are regulating our systems are often very different from the system itself, right? We should do self-regulation. And the thing is, in a complex world, simple is a drug. We love simple. Sell me the simple thing, please, because life is much nicer if that's real, but it isn't real. So it just gets more of a drug. And that drug is fed to you by the totalizer. And this is like an imaginary force I've dreamed up here. And you can see the totalizer wants to see everything, know everything, control everything. And my sort of argument here is, it's kind of metaphorically, but the totalizer cosmic force of centralization and control. And I've been thinking like universally, right? That this feels like a reaction to complexity, and complexity is everywhere in the universe. So everyone's going through this on every civilization everywhere. It's just, it's a thing. When complexity gets too much, you start to try and control the public. This is Liz Kendall, who's the Minister of Science and Technology. Not a scientist or a technologist. And this was her announcing digital ID in the UK, and she said the word control 8 times in 1 minute. I counted. And they love this stuff. They're horny for it, right? They want, because they think that's the solution to all our problems. Take control. It's not us that's the problem, it's them. And so we're starting to see a rise in this kind of like totalizing thinking, right? It's like a drug. This was an actual Instagram reel from Shabana Mahmood, who's now the Home Secretary. She got promoted on the back of this campaign. We'll break the law and we'll take away the things that you love. And it was a kind of social credit system that would work brilliant with digital ID. And they can yoink the pints off people. You know, like, I'm going to take away your trip to Benidorm, and you like football, don't you? We'll have that as well. And this is another quote from her. I'm a fan of Bentham's idea of the panopticon, where the eyes of the state will be on you at all times. Direct quote. She obviously never got the message not to go full panopticon. But yeah, I would call this big totalizer energy. And there's a lot of it about at the moment. And that's my kind of argument here, is it's because the world is spiraling away from us, right? Everything's getting more complex, and the instinct is to take control. So I call this totalizer tooling. There's loads of it. It's hot right now. Raised loads of money on it. KYC, digital ID, permissioned blockchains, CBDCs, orbs, of course. Claude, I count as a totalizing technology. Wants all your data. They're just going to rug everyone of everything at some point, I'm telling you. Palantir et al. There's just like loads of stuff coming out. We're talking about doing like full tilt facial recognition rollout across the UK. Cheap, actually. They'll be looking at it. It's like just CCD chips and Claude. Like, it's cheap. So yeah, we're getting there. The problem is that this kind of like brand of governance always fails. Like, you know, all you have to do is like look at any moment in history when things have got too centralized, they've collapsed. It doesn't stop us, though. We just keep going for it. So it's guaranteed to fail, but we're doing it anyway, and that's kind of where we are. Back to crypto. We've sort of let this kind of happen ourselves, right? We let the totalizer win too much. It's crime season, etc. So that means shut down the DAOs. Like, who needs a DAO anyway, right? It just slows things down. It's very annoying. You know, scale back the security councils. Let's just put the team in control and ship faster, etc. And consequently, because the DAOs were a bit of a mess, they've just gone, I'll shut it all down then, and we'll just go like max centralized, because now we can for a bit. But the thing is in crypto that this kind of centralization reveals itself pretty soon, normally by this guy, who rugs your coins because you use a one-of-one multisig, etc. So fortunately, there's a counterbalance to this force, if we're a bit more hopeful. And I call this the sovereign. It's the opposite. It's the yin to the yang, if you like. There's also a desire to be left alone. And people like peace and quiet. and people don't like to be dominated by centralized powers and all that sort of stuff. And it just so happens that the tools to have a sovereign existence are baked into the fabric of reality. So again, there's aliens elsewhere in the universe today using elliptic curve cryptography to probably do some money transfers and things like that. These are kind of universal technologies. Decentralization is this other component, and largely my sort of argument is we should be doing more of it generally everywhere, right? And you can think of decentralization as a kind of continuum. So if you think about what it is, like at the system level, you've got people like Kim here, max totalizer, I would say, in the world. You know, he's like one mind rules everything. We've got a nice example of it. I'm less sure on China now, because I think the UK might do this one pretty soon. Then you've got like autocrats, the military force, very hierarchical, very centralized. And then you can get into like big tech, which are like these massive companies that people are very scared of. A lot of the battle that we are getting, you know, chat control and largely the state just wants the same surveillance database that they have. And they're feeling like not as powerful because they don't have it, which is why they're trying to get it. And then you've got like the EU, all on the centralization spectrum. Then you can go to like transnational corporations, getting a little bit more decentralized, like the Leviathan state, the Americas. Then the UK was meant to be like the sovereign would break away from the EU, do our own thing, didn't do any of it. But theoretically, we are more sovereign now. And then you get into like the super decentralized orgs like the Taliban, for example. Can't stop those guys. They're very good. And they're very good because they're decentralized. We just picked a fight with 2 more of these decentralized armies. Not a good idea. And then you've got kind of where I think the Dow zone is. So yeah, I am saying the Dow zone is effectively the Goldilocks zone between Vitalik and the Taliban. But effectively, like in there, you can design decentralized systems in very sort of like elaborate ways. We can do anything. And then you've got your smart contract blockchains out to Bitcoin. And then you're getting like super decentralized, like a religion. If you start a religion, it takes a few thousand years, but very decentralized org. Centralized in some aspects, but it's a good way to scale an idea. And then you're into the mushrooms, very, very decentralized. Can't beat the mushrooms at that. And then you basically just like, there's nothing else, right? At the end game of decentralization is basically death as well, right? Because nothing interacts with anyone. It's the heat death of the universe. So anyway, key point, every complex system that fails to meaningfully decentralize itself will die. You just need to look at history, right? So basically, all of these centralized systems need to be offloading the power that they've accrued to themselves out to a wider distributed set, or they will collapse. It's just like, it's a fact. And we're showing the signs of getting there. So just to kind of finish off, like, if decentralization ultimately ends in death because nothing gets done, it implies that there's a sweet spot. And I think this is, we need to get a little bit more analytical about what we're actually trying to do with decentralization. So decentralization is actually super useful, right? It creates anti-fragility. It stops your system collapsing. So system collapse is the thing that we should be really worried about. And if you've decentralized authority out to a large number of people and there's localized control, it'll last for a long time. So DAOs and decentralized systems are a way to make things happen indefinitely. Like Ethereum will run indefinitely, as far as we know. And that's the key goal in the new mandate, right? Walk-away test. It's better for security. There was a few hacks recently. If they had their keys governed by a DAO, wouldn't have happened, right? They just over-centralized, left the keys too exposed. It's better for security. Provides paths to meaningful control to more people. And paths to zero control. I can credibly say that I'm not in control of this, and consequently, it opens up permissionlessness. Can't have permissionlessness and central control. And we'll find out this, with the whole Security Council incident on Arbitrum, this is the equilibrium has been destabilized on these things, and it's about to get interesting on that front. So localization, context sensing, participatory governance, all good things that you get out of decentralization, but centralization is also quite useful. It gets shit done. A lot of the kind of burn down the DAOs is largely due to the kind of dysfunction of decentralization. And people just flip back to the other way around. So I think we've got to, elements of centralization make sense. You get control, predictability, allows you to compete. So one of the things I'm working on at the moment, we have an LST which underperforms in the market at Jito because it's decentralized. We have 400 validators instead of 1. So we're competing with single validator LSTs. So what's the balance? And this is kind of where I'm at the moment, and we'll be doing some work on over the next month or two. I call it pragmatic decentralization, which is to actually look at the authorities and the real control. You have to boil it down to what do the token holders have control of? What does the DAO actually have control of? We can characterize these things because we're talking about literal functions on smart contracts. Now, the question is that some of those things, now Solana's a kind of move fast, break things kind of blockchain, and it does. They'll just throw in upgrades, and then downstream, that's just broke our protocol. So we have to go in and modify things because they've changed a digit somewhere or something like that. So we have to actively manage the protocol. So what I'm doing is splitting this out into a dev council. It's super centralized. We're trusting the labs team to control a certain set of authorities. But what I'm doing is characterizing them in tiers. Tier 1 is never going to leave the DAO, and that's the authorities that are in custody of user funds. Things that are ossified, we don't plan on touching these things anymore. They're decentralized. And things that need stable maintenance, they're on the road to ossification, and things that need active management. And these will sit with the dev council. Now, so what we're doing is taking power away from the DAO, which makes me very uncomfortable, but it's kind of necessary because we need to actively manage the protocol. So we're building this kind of veto trigger, which means that at any point the DAO can vote, and we build a pre-execution pathway for it to just yoink all the powers back. So this is the kind of pragmatic decentralization, is let's credibly think about the ways to safely transfer protocol powers to a trusted team, but make sure the token holders have hard powers to take over if there's ever a defection. So basically, in summary, the world needs decentralization to balance out the growing forces of totalization. It's getting a bit tasty out there. And generally, my dream for crypto was that it's like osmosis distributing decentralization out into the universe around the world. So I'm very convinced crypto will be the place we rebuild governance from first principles. It's just going to happen. So don't give up on it, please. Keep being passionate about it if any of you are. But generally, the sort of broad guidance is decentralize meaningful amounts of power, make it meaningful, make it credible. But you've got to compete in the market because there's no point in decentralizing a dead product. You have to win. So you're going to have to find the right pragmatic path. Unless you're kind of base layer protocol, in which case you can do the kind of things that Ethereum's doing and go hardcore on it. But as a protocol above that, you can play with it a bit. So, but ultimately, you've got to protect hard rights for the token holders. Provide hard veto rights, allow them, if they turn up and decide that they can do it better than you, they've got to be able to do it. And kind of resist this idea of just transfer everything to the devs. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
I don't think we have time for questions. Next is Ivo Maciek